The transport ship touched down on the alien capital's landing bay with a smooth hum. Daniel stepped out into blinding golden light, squinting at the massive towers rising above him. The air smelled faintly of sweet spices and metal, a strange mix that made him both curious and uneasy. He had been told this was a diplomatic mission, an exchange of goodwill between Earth and the Varelians. What he did not expect was the cheering crowd waiting for him, chanting in a language he didn't understand, yet somehow welcoming him with open arms. Two guards in shimmering armor approached, bowing slightly before escorting him through grand corridors. Everywhere he looked, alien eyes followed him with admiration. Silk banners of blue and gold hung from arched ceilings, and the floor beneath his boots was polished to a mirror shine. Servants carried trays of exotic fruits and steaming drinks, offering them as if he were royalty. Daniel's training told him to be cautious, but the warmth of the reception made it hard to resist. He had never been treated like this before. At the heart of the palace, a banquet awaited. Long tables overflowed with dishes that looked like art sculptures, glowing faintly under the crystal chandeliers. Alien musicians played instruments shaped like spirals and orbs, filling the air with haunting yet beautiful melodies. Daniel was guided to the central seat, higher than the others, where cushions of soft fabric embraced him. The guards stood nearby like loyal statues. It was impossible not to feel powerful in that chair. As the feast began, an alien girl entered the hall, and the room seemed to fall silent. She had deep blue skin and golden hair braided down her back, her eyes glowing like molten amber. Armor shaped to her form glinted in the light, yet her movements were graceful, almost fragile. She carried a silver tray of pastries and a crystal glass filled with a dark amber drink. Without speaking, she approached him, her gaze locked with his as if she had something urgent to say. When she leaned close, Daniel caught the faint scent of wild blossoms. Her voice, barely above a whisper, carried an intensity that cut through the cheerful noise of the feast. "They are going to sacrifice you," she said in perfect English, her lips barely moving. His heart pounded, but he forced himself not to react openly. Her warning clashed violently with the smiling faces and laughter surrounding him. He could not decide if this was a cruel joke or a deadly truth. She stepped back quickly, resuming, her calm, servant-like demeanor as though nothing had been said. Daniel glanced at the guards, but their expressions hadn't changed. If they had heard her, they gave no sign. The girl moved away, blending into the crowd as more food was served. Every bite Daniel took felt heavier now, every glance from the alien suspicious. He scanned the hall, searching for her face among the hundreds, but she had vanished. The music swelled again, and dancers in shimmering fabrics spun across the floor. Daniel's diplomatic contact, a tall alien with pale silver eyes, raised a toast in his honor. Everyone drank, and Daniel felt dozens of eyes watching to see if he would do the same. His mind raced. If the girl was telling the truth, was the drink poisoned, or was it part of some ritual? He lifted the glass slowly, buying time, his smile hiding the sharp edge of his thoughts. In that moment, he realized the celebration was more than hospitality. It was a stage, and he was the main actor. The golden seat, the endless food, the songs, they weren't just for honor. They were for display. And somewhere behind the walls of this palace, someone was preparing for whatever sacrifice meant in Varelian culture. The first day that had felt like a dream was twisting into something far darker. The great hall felt different the next morning. The cheerful music and loud voices from the night before were gone, replaced by an eerie quiet. Daniel woke in a lavish chamber with walls carved in swirling patterns, sunlight spilling in through tall, arched windows. Servants brought fresh clothing, made from smooth fabric that shimmered when it moved. They spoke softly, smiling, but their eyes seemed to study him as though he were something fragile. Every gesture they made felt rehearsed, as if hiding a truth he was not meant to see. A guard appeared and motioned for him to follow. His boots clicked against the marble floor as they walked through corridors lined with statues of past rulers. The alien faces carved into stone looked stern, their eyes fixed forward, holding weapons in their hands. Daniel noticed the statues. Bases were marked with strange circular symbols, and the same patterns were etched faintly into the walls. The air grew cooler the deeper they went into the palace, and the scent of incense became stronger. It made his skin prickle. They entered. A courtyard filled with flowers of unnatural colors. Their petals shifted hues when touched by the light, as though alive. A group of alien officials stood in a circle, speaking in low tones. When they saw Daniel, they stopped and turned toward him, smiling in unison. The sudden silence made his stomach tighten. One of them, wearing robes stitched with golden thread, stepped forward and offered him a fruit that glowed faintly from within. The gesture felt ceremonial, and Daniel hesitated before accepting it. The moment his fingers touched the fruit, the officials began speaking again, but now their voices carried a rhythm, almost like a chant. The guard behind Daniel stood straighter, his hand resting near the hilt of his weapon. Daniel's instincts told him to remain calm, to play along until he understood more. He bowed slightly, as he had been trained for diplomacy, and the officials seemed pleased. The chanting softened, and they waved him onward toward another archway framed by silver pillars. Inside was a long chamber, lit only by beams of colored light, filtering through crystal panels in the ceiling. The walls were decorated with murals showing scenes of battles, victories, and strange rituals. Daniel's eyes were drawn to one mural in particular, figures standing in a circle around a central figure bound at the hands, while a blade hovered above their head. He recognized the golden seat from last night's banquet in the painting, and his chest tightened. The scene looked far too familiar. He stepped closer, examining the details. The bound figure in the mural wasn't alien, the proportions, the clothing. It was human. His thoughts spun as he remembered the alien girl's whispered warning. This wasn't just an old legend. It was a tradition, and he feared he might be the next to play that role. Footsteps behind him made him turn sharply, and there she was again, the blue-skinned girl with golden braids, standing in the colored, light-like part of the mural itself. She approached quickly, her expression urgent but controlled. "You do not have much time," she said, her voice low but steady. "They have chosen you for the harvest ceremony. It will be tomorrow, when the sun reaches its highest point." Daniel kept his face neutral, aware of the guards watching from the doorway. "Why are you helping me?" he asked, his voice just as quiet. Her eyes flicked toward the murals before returning to his. "Because once, someone helped me, and now it is my turn," she replied. Before he could ask more, she pressed a small metallic object into his hand and stepped back. It was cold, shaped, like a smooth pebble, but covered in tiny moving lines of light. "Keep it hidden. It will open a way out when the time comes," she said. Then she turned and walked toward the guards, who straightened as she passed. Daniel slipped the device into his sleeve, his mind racing. The girl had just given him his first chance at survival, and he wasn't about to waste it. Daniel returned to his chamber with the metallic device hidden in his sleeve. The walls of the palace felt closer now, the corridors narrower, as though the building itself was aware of what he carried. Every guard he passed seemed to linger, with their gaze a little too long. The fine clothing he wore felt heavier than armor, and each smile from the servants looked rehearsed. He wondered how many of them knew what was planned for him, and how many were simply following orders without question. He sat on the edge of the cushioned bed, turning the device over in his hands when he was sure no one could see. The thin lines of light along its surface shifted and formed shapes that resembled a map. The layout was unfamiliar, but he guessed it was part of the palace. One glowing point pulsed in a steady rhythm, perhaps marking his location or an escape route. Whatever it was the only advantage he had, and he intended to keep it safe. The midday meal was brought by two servants, both moving silently as they placed the dishes on a low table. The food was beautiful, yet strange, with colors and textures that seemed alive. Daniel forced himself to eat slowly, acting as though nothing was wrong. He knew sudden changes in behavior could draw suspicion. One servant offered a steaming drink, and for a moment he thought of the girl's warning. He accepted it with a polite nod, but only took a small sip, careful not to reveal his caution. After the meal, he was escorted to a grand balcony overlooking the alien city. Towers of glass and metal rose into the clouds, their surfaces catching the sunlight and scattering it in 1,000 colors. Bridges arched between buildings like silver threads, and hovering craft moved silently through the air. It was breathtaking, but the beauty felt like a trap. The more he saw of their advanced civilization, the more he understood how difficult escape would be. Still, the device in his sleeve offered a spark of hope. A voice startled him. It was the alien girl again, standing in the shadow of a tall pillar. She moved quickly to his side, keeping her back to the guards stationed nearby. "Tonight," she whispered, "if you wait until morning, it will be too late." Her golden eyes were sharp, and there was no hesitation in her tone. Daniel glanced at the guards, who hadn't moved, and leaned slightly toward her. "Where do I go?" he asked. She gestured toward the far end of the balcony, where an archway led into another hallway. "You will find a door marked with the same lines as on the device," she said. "It will open for you and lead to the lower chambers. From there, you must move quickly before they seal the exits." Her voice carried a weight that told him she had risked much to give him this information. Daniel nodded once, committing every detail to memory. She stepped back, her face returning to the calm mask of a palace servant, and drifted away toward the other end of the balcony. The rest of the day passed under careful watch. Daniel attended another small gathering with alien officials, where they discussed meaningless topics in a show of diplomacy. His mind, however, was fixed on the night ahead. He studied the palace layout as best he could without drawing attention, noting guard movements and the timing of their shifts. Every moment brought him closer to the point where he would have to trust the girl's plan and the strange device she had given him. When night finally fell, the palace grew quiet except for the faint hum of machinery deep within the walls. Daniel waited until the guards outside his chamber changed positions, then moved silently toward the balcony. The air was cool, carrying the faint scent of the alien city below. He reached the archway and found the door exactly as she had described, the glowing lines matching those on the device. With a deep breath, he pressed the device against it, and the door slid open without a sound. The hallway beyond the secret door was dimly lit, the walls made of smooth black stone that absorbed sound. Daniel's footsteps were muffled as he moved forward, the device in his hand guiding him with faint pulses of light. The air was cooler here, carrying the scent of minerals and something faintly metallic. He kept his pace steady, forcing himself not to rush. Every shadow looked like it could hide danger, but turning back was no longer an option. The path sloped downward, leading him deeper into the palace's understructure. Strange humming vibrations passed through the floor, as though massive machinery was working far below. The corridor opened into a wider space where tall columns supported the ceiling, and between them were sealed doors marked with alien runes. The device glowed brighter when he passed certain ones, but he followed the route it indicated without hesitation. The deeper he went, the more he felt the weight of the alien world pressing in on him. A sudden noise made him stop, It was soft, almost like fabric brushing against stone, but it was close. Daniel turned, scanning the shadows, and saw the alien girl step forward from behind a column. Her golden braids caught the faint light, and her eyes locked onto his with urgency. "You're ahead of schedule," she whispered. "Good. It means fewer patrols." She moved beside him, her armor making only the faintest sound as she walked. There was no time for greetings or questions, only movement. She led him through a series of side passages, each one narrower than the last. At one point, they had to pass through a chamber lined with glowing blue crystals that pulsed in rhythm, casting shifting patterns across the walls. The girl explained in a low voice that these crystals powered parts of the palace. "They'll detect any weapon discharge here," she warned. "So whatever happens, stay quiet." Daniel nodded, gripping the device tighter. The sense of being hunted was stronger than ever. They reached a metal platform that overlooked a deep chasm. Far below, faint lights traced winding paths through the darkness, hinting at the vastness of the structure. A thin bridge connected the platform to another doorway on the opposite side. The girl stepped onto it without hesitation, her balance perfect, while Daniel followed with careful steps. Halfway across, a distant echo of footsteps reached them. The girl froze, her head tilting as she listened, then motioned for him to hurry. They crossed into the next hallway just as the sound grew louder. The girl tapped a sequence into a panel beside the door, and it sealed shut with a hiss. "That will buy us some time," she said, "but they'll know someone is moving through the lower levels soon." She quickened her pace, and Daniel matched her stride. The corridors here were older, their walls worn and cracked, and the air was colder. It felt like they were walking through the bones of the palace. Finally, they reached a large chamber where the ceiling opened to the night sky. A circular platform occupied the center, surrounded by strange mechanical arms that reached upward like claws. In the middle of the platform was a structure that resembled a cage, its bars made of energy that shimmered faintly. "This is the gate," the girl said. "It's not just an exit. It's a transporter. It will take you far beyond the city, maybe even off-world if the coordinates hold." Her voice carried a weight of uncertainty. Before Daniel could respond, a loud alarm rang through the chamber, its pitch sharp enough to vibrate in his chest. The girl's eyes widened, and she stepped toward the control panel near the gate. "They've found us," she said. "We don't have much time." Daniel moved to help, but she waved him toward the platform. "Get inside. I'll activate it." The guards would be here any moment, and the air already carried the tension of an approaching storm. Daniel stepped onto the shimmering platform, the air around him humming with energy. The surface beneath his feet felt weightless, as if it were both solid and liquid at the same time. The alien girl moved with quick precision at the control panel, her golden braids swinging as her fingers danced over glowing symbols. Sparks of light flared between the mechanical arms above, casting long, sharp shadows across the chamber. Every sound in the distance told him the guards were closing. A pounding rhythm began to echo from the corridors beyond, heavy boots striking the stone floor in unison. The girl glanced toward the sound, her eyes narrowing with urgency. "Stay where you are," she ordered. Daniel kept his focus on her, trusting that whatever she was doing was his only chance of survival. The hum of the platform deepened into a steady thrum, and faint arcs of light began to twist upward around him. It felt like standing inside a growing storm. The first of the guards appeared at the far end of the chamber, weapons drawn and armor glinting under the strange light. Shouts in their alien tongue cut through the alarm, followed by the heavy clatter of reinforcements arriving. The girl pressed her hand against a larger symbol on the panel, and the energy cage around the platform flared brighter. "It's charging," she said, "but it needs a few more seconds." Her voice was steady, but Daniel could see the strain in her movements. One guard raised a weapon that glowed with a pale green light. Daniel instinctively ducked as a beam shot across the chamber, striking the mechanical arm above him. The structure groaned, and fragments of metal rained down, scattering sparks. The girl spun toward the attacker, her own blade snapping out from a hidden sheath at her side. She moved with a speed that blurred her form, cutting down the nearest guard before he could fire again. Her strikes were fast and precise. More guards surged into the room, and the girl positioned herself between them and the platform. Her blade flashed as she deflected their attacks, each movement flowing into the next with almost unnatural grace. Daniel gripped the edge of the platform, torn between wanting to help and knowing he would only slow her down. The arcs of light around him were now spiraling faster, reaching toward the sky like a column of lightning. The transporter was nearly ready. A sudden explosion rocked the chamber as one of the guards hurled an energy grenade toward the control panel. The blast knocked the girl sideways, her armor sparking from the impact. She staggered but quickly regained her stance, limping slightly. Daniel's chest tightened as he realized how much she was risking for him. She reached the panel again, slamming her hand down on the final sequence. "Now!" she shouted, her voice carrying over the chaos. The platform's energy surged upward, the light was blinding, and Daniel felt the air tear away from around him. A force like a rushing wind pulled at every part of his body, yet he remained in place. Through the haze of light, he caught one last glimpse of the girl. She stood with her blade raised, facing the oncoming wave of guards, her expression calm and unyielding. In that moment, he understood she had never intended to escape with him. Her mission had always been to ensure he survived. The sound of the guards, the alarms, and even the hum of the transporter faded into silence. The light around him shifted into a tunnel of swirling colors, and the sensation of movement became impossible to measure. Daniel's thoughts raced with questions. Where he was going, what the girl's fate would be, and why she had chosen to help him at all. The only thing he knew for certain was that his journey was far from over. Daniel felt his body lurch as the swirling tunnel of light collapsed into darkness. The sensation of weightlessness ended abruptly when his boots struck solid ground. The air was crisp and carried the faint scent of damp earth. He blinked rapidly, adjusting to the dim glow of an alien moon hanging above. Around him stretched a dense forest of towering black trees, whose leaves shimmered faintly with silver veins. The transporter had delivered him somewhere far from the palace, but he had no idea where. His breathing was loud in the silence, and the only other sound came from the soft rustle of leaves overhead. He looked around, half expecting guards to emerge from the shadows, but nothing moved. Pulling the device from his sleeve, he saw its glowing lines shift and rearrange, forming an arrow that pointed deeper into the forest. He hesitated only for a moment before following it. The girl had risked her life to give him this chance, and he would not waste it. The ground was uneven, littered with twisted roots and stones that glistened faintly in the moonlight. Every so often, strange insect-like creatures darted across his path, their translucent wings catching the silver glow. The deeper he went, the denser the forest became, until the trees grew so close together that only thin beams of moonlight reached the ground. Still, he pressed on, keeping the arrow on the device centered before him. Somewhere ahead lay either safety or another trap. After what felt like hours, the forest opened into a small clearing. At its center stood a structure made of smooth black stone, shaped like a dome with no visible entrance. The device's arrow pulsed faster now, drawing him toward it. As he approached, lines of faint blue light appeared on the surface of the dome, forming the same pattern he had seen on the secret palace door. Without thinking, he pressed the device to the glowing lines, and the stone dissolved into nothing. Inside was a single chamber, lit by soft golden light that seemed to come from the air itself. In the center stood a table carved from crystal, and on it rested a small metallic cube. As he stepped closer, the cube unfolded, revealing a glowing projection of the alien girl. She appeared unharmed, but was clearly still in the palace. "If you are seeing this, then you made it," her voice said, calm but urgent. "They will search for you, but this place is hidden from their eyes." She continued speaking, explaining that the device contained not only a map of safe routes, but also data proving the true purpose of the so-called harvest ceremony. The sacrifice, she revealed, was part of an ancient tradition meant to bind alien rulers to their gods through the offering of a foreign life. "You were chosen because you are human," she said. "The old beliefs say the blood of an off-worlder holds more power." Her eyes in the projection softened as she added, "I could not let that happen." Daniel stood in silence, absorbing her words. The projection shifted to display star charts and coded messages, detailing possible routes off the planet entirely. She told him to follow the paths until he reached a place where humans still had allies. "There, you can decide whether to disappear or return," she said. "But if you return, do so prepared." The projection flickered, and for a moment he wished he could ask her why she cared so much, but the message was one way. The cube closed, and the room fell silent once more. Daniel picked it up, feeling its weight as both a burden and a promise. Stepping outside, he looked up at the alien moon again, its pale light casting long shadows across the clearing. Somewhere far behind him, in the heart of the palace, the girl was likely fighting to survive. He turned toward the path, the device, now displayed, his steps steady. Whatever came next, he would carry her warning and her courage with him. Daniel moved swiftly through the forest, guided by the soft pulse of the device in his hand. The path ahead twisted between jagged rock formations and thick clusters of glowing plants. Each step felt like progress, yet a faint unease lingered at the back of his mind. The alien girl's recorded warning echoed in his thoughts, and the weight of the cube in his pocket reminded him of the risk she had taken. He knew that danger was not behind him alone, but all around him. The forest sounds began to change as he moved deeper. The quiet hum of insects faded, replaced by distant howls and the rustle of unseen creatures moving through the undergrowth. The moonlight overhead grew dim as a mist rolled between the towering trees. Daniel slowed his pace, every sense alert. He could feel the terrain shifting beneath his boots, the ground becoming damp and soft. Whatever lay ahead was bringing him closer to the unknown. The device's arrow now pointed toward a narrow ravine cutting through the forest floor. From above, he could hear the trickle of water running between moss-covered stones. A fallen tree formed a makeshift bridge across the gap, its surface slick with moisture. Daniel tested it carefully before crossing, keeping his balance as the mist swirled below. Once on the other side, he glanced back and noticed faint movement in the fog, as though something had been watching him. His route soon brought him to the base of a steep hill where the forest opened slightly, revealing a weathered stone archway. Alien symbols were etched into its surface, glowing faintly like embers. The arrow on the device pulsed faster here, urging him forward. Daniel stepped through, and the air immediately felt heavier, as though he had crossed into another world. The faint sound of running water was gone, replaced by a deep, resonant hum that seemed to vibrate in his bones. Beyond the archway was a network of ancient tunnels, their walls covered in crystalline growths that pulsed in time with the hum. The light from the crystals was enough to guide his way, casting shimmering reflections across the smooth stone floor. Daniel moved cautiously, wary of traps or patrols. The deeper he went, the more the tunnels twisted and split, forcing him to rely entirely on the device's glowing map. Each intersection brought the same choice: trust the girl's guidance or be lost forever. Eventually, the tunnel opened into a vast underground chamber. In the center stood a tall, cylindrical structure surrounded by a ring of alien machinery. The device's arrow pointed directly to it, and Daniel approached, feeling the air grow warmer with each step. Strange symbols shifted across the machine's surface, as though reacting to his presence. A panel slid open soundlessly, revealing a small console with an indentation shaped exactly like the cube in his pocket. He placed the cube into the slot, and it locked into place with a soft click. Immediately, the chamber filled with a low hum as the machines came alive. A projection appeared in the air, showing the alien girl again, but this time her expression was tense. "You've reached the relay point," she said. "From here, you can send the data to the stars, to places even they cannot reach. But once you do, they will know exactly where you are." Her voice was calm, but her words carried an edge. Daniel looked at the console, then at the vast, empty chamber around him. He understood the choice. Send the truth out into the galaxy, and risk immediate pursuit, or keep it hidden and remain a fugitive. The girl's image flickered slightly, as though the connection was unstable. "If you decide to send it," she said, "remember that some will see you as a savior, and others as a threat." Daniel's hand hovered over the console, the weight of his decision pressing down like a storm. Daniel's fingers hovered above the console, the glow from the symbols reflecting off his face. The air in the chamber felt alive, charged with an energy that made every breath heavier. He could almost hear the girl's voice in his head, urging him to finish what she had started. The cube pulsed faintly in the console's slot, as though it too was waiting for his choice. He thought of the palace, the banquet, and the whispered warning that had changed everything. He pressed his hand firmly onto the activation panel. Instantly, streams of light shot upward from the machines, twisting together into a massive column that pierced the ceiling and reached into the night sky. The hum deepened, shaking the ground beneath his feet. Data. Everything the girl had, hidden, was being launched beyond the planet, scattering like sparks across the stars. Somewhere, allies or enemies would soon receive it. The moment felt final, a point from which there was no return. The projection of the girl appeared once more, faint and flickering. "It's done," she said, her voice softer now. "They will know, and they will come. But so will those who will stand with you." Her golden eyes locked on his, even through the distortion. "If I do not see you again, remember, what you carry is more than truth. It is a weapon." The image dissolved, leaving Daniel alone in the echoing silence of the chamber. The device in the console released the cube, and he took it, slipping it securely into his pocket. The arrow on the device changed again, now pointing toward a passage opposite the one he had entered. He followed it, his steps steady but his mind sharp. Every shadow seemed deeper, every sound more urgent. He knew the alien forces would soon be hunting for him with more intensity than ever before. The race to survive had truly begun. The new tunnel led upward in a steady incline, and the air grew warmer as he climbed. Soon, the sound of rushing water reached his ears, and faint daylight appeared ahead. He emerged onto a rocky outcrop high above the forest, the alien moon and its silver light stretching across the horizon. The view was breathtaking, but Daniel's focus remained on the task ahead. Somewhere beyond these wild lands lay a path, to safety, or to the next battle. He descended carefully along a narrow trail carved into the cliffside. Below, the forest spread endlessly, broken only by shimmering rivers and clusters of strange, glowing plants. The device in his hand pulsed, rhythmically leading him forward. He thought again of the girl in the palace, her courage, and the way she had faced the guards without fear. Whatever her fate, she had given him more than a chance to live. She had given him a purpose. As night began to fall, Daniel reached the edge of the forest where a vast plain opened before him. In the distance, faint lights flickered, possibly a settlement or outpost. His body ached from the journey, but his steps did not slow. The message had been sent, and the truth was no longer hidden. The aliens might try to silence him, but now the galaxy would know of their ancient and deadly tradition. The balance of power had shifted. Daniel tightened his grip on the device and started across the plain, the wind carrying the scent of distant fires. The alien sky above was filled with strange constellations, each one a reminder of how far from home he truly was. Yet for the first time since his arrival, he felt something close to hope. Whatever dangers lay ahead, he was no longer just a guest or a target. He was a survivor, armed with the truth and ready to fight for it.